do is say, you go, people, go ahead, go, and then we'll see you the Wednesday after the election.
Now, as much as I'd love to have a new left-wing socialist or communist party, he knows that our system is rigged against third parties. So he's trying to bait the left into taking a path to powerlessness, so they marginalize themselves, so that way him and his ilk will be able to maintain their monopoly on the Democratic Party. But that mentality right there, this anti-left mentality, is part of the reason why the Democratic Party has lost credibility with so many people. I mean, think about the way they talk about the left. When it comes to the left, well, maybe we have irreconcilable differences and we should split. But when it comes to neocons and Republicans like Liz Cheney, well, we're Big Ten, so we've got to be open to diverse points of view if we want to win. Never mind the fact that Kamala Harris literally just tried to win with anti-Trump Republicans in lieu of progressives and lost the election. Never mind the fact that James Garfield himself recently admitted that Bernie's more progressive, populist message would have actually paid off, even if it pained him to admit that Bernie Sanders is right about anything.
Was this an economy election? And if so, is Sanders right that on populist, working-class, kitchen-table issues, the Dems didn't do enough?
I think Sanders has some point here.
Fast forward to today, and his demented brain has already reverted back to homeostasis, and he's not only saying that the party should split with the left, he's straight up attacking people like Bernie Sanders and AOC who are breathing new life into the Democratic Party, which is precisely what it needs right now. Nonetheless, James Garfield thinks that they're bad.
Let me make a point about Bernie and AOC. Bernie won for president twice. He's lost twice. AOC, in her time, and this guy, David Hall, they want to run against other Democrats. Yeah. They don't run against Republicans. When you beat a Republican, come back and see me, and I will be impressed.
Let him try. You fucking cunt.
When he's demonstrably wrong about everything he says. As Adam Carlson put it on Twitter, AOC outperformed Harris in terms of raw votes.
The only people who have beaten Bernie Sanders is other fucking loser Democrats that suck.
Ousting a Republican incumbent, and the last time Carville advised a campaign that beat a Republican was 29 years ago. But the reason why people like him continue to steer the party in whatever direction they go in, which is usually the wrong direction, is because of seniority, as David Hogg pointed out. But later on in that same clip, Chris Cuomo groups AOC and Bernie Sanders with David Hogg in order to make one of the dumbest false equivalences I have ever heard in my entire life. And the mention of David Hogg then triggers Carville, who then rants about how David Hogg should be sued. So buckle up, because this one is quite the doozy.
What you see with Bernie and AOC right now is MAGA playbook. MAGA playbook. Make the masses angry. Dave Hogg, that's MAGA playbook. Go after your own and have a purity test. But what beats you, if you become that, you're not going to beat it.
Right. Well, I don't think that most of the Democrats are that. And maybe we need to have a schism. Maybe we can form a governing coalition. This happens every time in parliamentary things. When you come in, you say, okay, you want to be part of our coalition. But when it's all the time running against us, what if somebody sued David Hogg? He's an officer of the Democratic National Committee. He is the vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and he's running against other Democrats. I would like to know, and you went to law school, does he have a fiduciary duty toward Democrats? If you work for News Nation, you can't promote CNN. That's if you work for somebody else. You have a fiduciary duty to your employer, which anybody can understand. He's being paid to run against other Democrats. I think it's an outrage. I don't know if I have standing, but I might give the DNC $10 and sue him. He's a contemptible little twerp.
Okay, that was a lot of stupidity, so I guess we'll just try to unpack it in chronological order, because I don't know how else to address it. First of all, Bernie and AOC, they're not making people angry, Chris Cuomo. They're already angry. People are mad, and Bernie and AOC are trying to harness that anger so people are mad at oligarchs, the people who are actually causing their pain and suffering, and not immigrants or trans people who are not causing their pain and suffering. But speaking of, using the MAGA playbook, why don't you talk to your sex pest brother about that? Because he's functionally as close to MAGA as a Democrat can be without switching parties. Second of all, Carville again proposes that leftists go their own way and floats the idea of some sort of a governing coalition like they have in parliamentary systems. The problem with that idea, James, is that as much as I would love that, we're not in a fucking parliamentary system. So you're asking the left to effectively give up all of their leverage by leaving the party. And while I'm not convinced personally that the Democratic Party can even be reformed at this point, I'm even less convinced that Democrats would ever agree to some sort of a power-sharing agreement with a new leftist party when they won't even share power with the leftists in their own party. Finally, James Carville floated the idea of suing David Hogg for, I guess, having a strategy that he doesn't like, which is, brilliant. Listen, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as DNC chair, literally violated the DNC's own neutrality clause by colluding with Clinton to sabotage Sanders. And do you want to know what the DNC's defense was in court when they were sued for that? They argued that the DNC was a private company. If the party wanted to go back to picking candidates in smoke-filled back rooms, they could do that, and there's fuck all you could do about it. So the idea that now you think it's the time to sue the Democratic Party, or a leader in particular, for malfeasance, is pretty funny. Now, David Hogg responded to Carville's tantrum, and what he had to say was perfect.
What's his plan to deal with our 27% approval rating? That's my question to him. The fact of the matter is, right now, our party is in a crisis. We are seeing people lose faith in our party. They're losing faith in democracy across the country. And we need to make sure that we're getting people to vote for Democrats, not simply because we're not Donald Trump, but because we have a better message, a better option for them. Not simply the less bad of two options, as I think Carville tries to promote when he says, well, we just shouldn't say anything. Carville believes in a politics of being timid, of hiding. I believe in fighting. And that is what people want to see right now from the Democratic Party. We just saw an example of that with Senator Van Hollen going to El Salvador to say, we need this man. And yes, Democrats obviously are in the minority right now. But let's be clear, we cannot win back the majority if we cannot convince the American people that our party offers something that isn't just not Donald Trump, but is substantially better than Donald Trump, that fights for lower costs for Americans across the country, whether it's healthcare, housing, or the foundational building blocks of the American dream that feels so out of reach for people, or addressing gun violence. We can't simply just hide, as Carville repeatedly promotes, not to mention the fact that, frankly, he has not won an election before I was born. I think it's time for some new voices in our party.
Well said. And that's part of the reason why he's trying to promote generational change, because the same people who've been dictating the direction of the party for decades are responsible for the predicament that we're in. People are desperate because things aren't getting better, and neither party is doing enough to address people's material needs. Hence why people are becoming susceptible to radicalization, because they're so desperate. The neoliberalism embraced by both parties has hollowed out the middle class and facilitated the rise of fascism that we're all dealing with today. So David is right to think that the same people who got us into this mess aren't going to be the same people to get us out of the mess, since they made the mess in the first place. With that being said, even though David's heart is in the right place, his plan is, quite frankly, ideologically incoherent and at times contradictory. For example, he won't say who isn't fighting enough, but when you ask him which Democrats he thinks are fighting enough, his answer is genuinely fucking puzzling, to put it charitably.
There are great older people in our party that are leading the fight against Donald Trump and have been doing so for nearly a decade at this point, like Congresswoman Pelosi. We also have people, obviously, like Jan Schakowsky and so many others that are leading this moment. But the reality is, we know that only 27% of our base is approving of where we are right now as a party. If we had a proportional number of 25 to 30-year-old people in Congress, as we do in the general population, we would have over 40 members under 30. But currently, there is only one. That is part of the reason why we're losing our young voters. And what we have to do to protect our democracy is show our young voters that we are here to use democracy to fight back against the special interests that are killing the American dream, and fight back the special interests that have put them through school shootings.
So in one breath, he says it's not about age, it's about effectiveness and a generational change and getting rid of Democrats beholden to special interests. But in another breath, he's praising Nancy Pelosi and Jan Schakowsky, even though both of them are antithetical to his own stated goals. Now, on one hand, I think that Nancy Pelosi is somewhat more effective at fighting Republicans, at least compared to Hakeem Jeffries, but that's a really low bar. But in terms of special interests, you can't tell me it's about getting special interests out of the party and then say, oh, Nancy Pelosi is somebody who's an example of a good Democrat. As if she's not beholden to special interests. As if she's not doing insider trading and getting rich while nothing changes in the fucking country. Listen, what makes it even worse for David is that Nancy Pelosi is currently being primaried by a younger, more progressive Democrat named Shaikhar Chakrabarti, who's AOC's former chief of staff, And Jan Schakowsky is also being primaried by a Gen Z progressive activist and journalist, Kat Abou-Gazella. Both of these young candidates aren't taking any money from special interests. They're fighting relentlessly against Trump and the Republicans. In fact, Kat launched her campaign calling on Democrats to stop being cowards, and they would both represent the generational change that David Hogg says he wants, yet he seemingly is embracing the out-of-touch incumbents that those younger candidates are running against. So what exactly is the criteria here? Maybe some more examples will help clear that up, you would think, right? Wrong, because the more examples that he gives, the more confusing it gets.
I want more people like Congressman Maxwell Frost, right, who has helped to lead the charge in Congress against gun violence, helped to push, the former Biden administration to create the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Or people like Senator Van Hollen, who are literally going through those things. It looks like people like Cory Booker, who, mind you, did primary somebody to get to that position. It looks like people, in many ways, like Hakeem Jeffries, who primaried multiple people to get to that position.
Now, here's where we start to lose the fucking plot entirely. If Hakeem Jeffries is a leader that you look up to, who embodies the effectiveness that you're supposedly looking for in Democratic Party leaders, then you don't know what you're looking for. Jeffries specifically faced backlash for not doing enough to fight Donald Trump and had the audacity to ask what leverage they had. And Jeffries isn't just ineffective at fighting Republicans, he is a collaborator with fascist Republicans and literally held hands with them in support of a rogue state committing a genocide. Yeah, but let's not primary him. He's actually a good example of a leader doing the good work to fight Republicans, according to David Hogg. Now, speaking of special interests, which David purports to care about, Hakeem Jeffries supports the genocidal state of Israel because he is one of their top recipients. And on that note, Silicon Valley oligarchs were one of the first groups that Hakeem Jeffries reached out to after the election as leader in order to mend fences with them. Not with voters, but with Silicon Valley oligarchs. Not to mention, he scolded Democrats like Al Green for daring to disrupt Donald Trump's joint address to Congress. But that's your good guy, David? That's an example of a Democrat who's fighting Republicans effectively? Are you fucking kidding me? By your own criteria, he should be one of your first targets, but instead, he's an example to you of someone who's doing a good job at fighting Trump and the Republicans. Make it make sense if it doesn't. Now, he also cites Cory Booker, and Cory Booker gave a 25-hour speech.
Anytime.
And that's great and all, great way to use the bully pulpit, which is what we want, sure. The problem is that right after that speech, he voted against a resolution to cut off weapons to Israel. So if you're going to talk the talk, you better be able to walk the walk. And on that note, Cory Booker doesn't support policies like Medicare for All, which is one of the main reasons why so many people are frustrated with Democrats, because they're out of touch with their own base and not offering a compelling alternative to Republicans, which is something that you say you want, David. But to be fair, he also names Maxwell Frost and Chris Van Hollen as other examples of good Democrats, and even though I have my criticisms of both of them, they are better Democrats for sure. But again, you're not supporting Democrats like them who are primarying do-nothing incumbents. What gives? I mean, like, if you want more Democrats like Frost and Van Hollen, why would you seemingly snub Chakrabarti and Abou-Gazella? I mean, we're kind of all over the place here ideologically, which begs the question, what is David Hogg's litmus test? Because age, effectiveness, and ideology don't seem to be part of his criteria, and this was a question that was asked by an unhinged K-Hive influencer who called on Hogg to explain himself. He then went on to go on one of his unhinged rants that he's known for, but the core of his question that he's asking is still good nonetheless, so let's hear him out.
I want to know specifics. What is the litmus test? Okay, are we doing this based off a voting record? Are we doing this based off of progressivism? Are we doing this based off of age? Are we doing this based off of gender, race? Because historically speaking, just as Democrats have continuously attacked black legislators, and I'm not here with the motherfucking shit. I'm not here with the prejudice, progressive shit. If this is what the fuck you're doing, we're going to have a problem. Because a lot of y'all will sit here and say, well, it's based off of performance. So are we basing it off of who's popular, or are we actually basing it off of performance? Because a lot of people just go off of the performative nature on it, because not everybody is as popular as a Jasmine Crockett also doing the motherfucking work. But however, a lot of people didn't know who the fuck Al Green was until he acted the damn fool on the State of the Union, rightfully damn so. A lot of y'all will probably be looking at Al Green and with his age, and being the fact that he's held that damn seat for 20 damn years, thinking that when he doesn't retire, are we going to primary this black man? Even though this black man has done a well for his motherfucking district, I'm talking about delivering $100 million motherfucking dollars to his damn constituents. I want to know, what are you going to do, and are you going to target black people? Because again, historically speaking, y'all already tried to primary Hakeem Jeffries before he became the minority leader. And I'm also looking in the motherfucking comments that people are trying to hold Hakeem Jeffries to the most impossible motherfucking standards that they didn't even hold Nancy to. But however, Hakeem Jeffries was able to do his damn job by whipping the votes to vote against the continuing resolution. Why the fuck is he gonna have to pay the motherfucking price and pay for the fucking crimes of damn Chuck Schumer? Why not hold that white bitch to that motherfucking standard? How about that?
Why not both? See, even though I'm also confused about David Hogg's criteria, it's idiotic to assume that he's specifically only targeting black members of Congress. Why is that your automatic assumption? It makes no sense. Now, to be fair to him, the reason why he's worried about this is because he claims that Justice Democrats targeted black and brown incumbents. But to be unfair to him, he's dead fucking wrong, and he's making that up. It's just not true. Justice Democrats were disproportionately from minority communities themselves. So if the incumbent that they were targeting happened to be black, they were too. And I think that the organization that he's thinking of that targets black and brown members of Congress is AIPAC, who just spent millions of dollars to replace Jamal Bowman with a racist white dude who's effectively a Republican. In fact, this same person was making jokes about that, as if it wasn't despicable that a foreign lawmaker was able to unseat a black man for daring to condemn genocide. So, I mean, drop the bullshit. We know that this is about ideology, not identity, and we can all...
And welcome back to Good Night Rita, a series all about the movie Groundhog Day and other time loop stories in popular culture, hosted by me, Christopher Bingham. In this episode, I want to transition into a broader discussion of time loop film and television by talking about Groundhog Day's massive legacy, how imitations of its time loop formula have boomed in the 30 years since its release, and how they've evolved. I also want to ask why. What is it about time loops that we love so much?
The New York Times Sunday magazine did an article on popular culture, and they posed the question to scholars, critics, what of popular culture will remain 100 years from now? And a Harvard philosophy professor wrote that of all the movies, the movie he chose was Groundhog Day. He said 100 years from now, people will watch Groundhog Day, and it'll be a marker of some kind. It'll still be relevant. It'll still be meaningful.
In 2024, former US President Barack Obama wrote, "Harold's movies make us laugh, but they also do more than that. They encourage us to root for the underdog, to identify with the outsider, and to remember that we are always capable of changing for the better." And this goes to the very heart of Groundhog Day, a story about quantifying your effect on the world and others around you, about learning to be a better man and learning how to love.
Harold it has sort of rare quality of being very funny and not particularly cynical. And I think his work sort of indicates that. Groundhog Day inherently had a sort of uplifting quality to it, but it would be very easy for him, in the hands of another director, to turn it much darker.
Arguably, however, Groundhog Day is remembered more for the narrative mechanism by which it delivers these messages than for the messages themselves. And that mechanism turns out to be a really versatile, malleable scaffold for storytelling that a lot of people find appealing. To research for this series, so far I've watched 50 different examples of time loop movies or episodes of television. My goal is to watch 100. I've watched a couple of examples from the early to mid-80s, and a couple from 1992 and 1993 prior to the release of Groundhog Day. But the majority I've discovered are after its release, one each released in the years 96, 97, 98, 99, and 2000. 2 to 3 released in each of the years of 2008, 2009, and 2010. 5 released in 2017 alone. 3 in 2019, and 4 in 2020. My sheet isn't comprehensive, at least not yet, but it already reveals a rapid explosion in the number of time loop stories appearing on our screens. There are a bunch of different factors that might be causing this upward trend. One that feels fairly clear to me is simply about demographics. As the people, like myself, who grew up watching Groundhog Day, become the filmmakers themselves, their influences and interests come to the surface. Another could be that culturally, there's a far broader engagement and literacy when it comes to fantasy and science fiction genre film, particularly time travel, due in part to decades of science fiction television like Star Trek and Doctor Who.
When you're doing a groundhog story now, it's kind of like, what genre are we blending with? Is it going to be sci-fi? Is it going to be fantasy? Is it going to be horror?
I'd argue that audiences today, thanks to modern pop culture, are more accepting of texts that blend different genres. And in a post-internet, post-remix culture world, one where we have access to 100 years of moving picture at the tap of a phone screen, it's this, mixed with that, can be a winning sales pitch. One factor that can't be ignored is the advancement of video games. Film audiences have had 30 years to become familiar with video games, and we all play them more than ever. For a bit of context, Groundhog Day came out the same year as the original Doom. In 1993, the video game market was already pretty big at $30 billion, arcades still being the biggest chunk of that. And now, at time of recording, the industry is over $200 billion, multi-million AAA titles.
Need anything? Any lotions or potions?
Becoming theme parks and major movie franchises.
Nay,
The language, the logic of video games has been absorbed into the zeitgeist and turns up everywhere. And what's more video game than a scenario where the protagonist lives the same day over and over, dying or otherwise failing, and then starting again from the beginning of the level? The infinite do-over, the roguelike, extra lives, timed challenges, respawns and resets. Because of video games, we all experience something a bit like Phil's time loop. Some of the examples I've watched, particularly towards the end of the 10s and into the early 20s, have more in common with video games than they do with Groundhog Day, or they borrow the cinematic language of Groundhog Day, whilst having their characters use the verbiage of video games to explain it to each other or the audience. These games have become a clear and accessible cultural touchstone. When it comes to the look of a time loop, something we discussed in the previous episode, it's interesting to consider what was already out there at the time that the filmmakers might have drawn inspiration from. We previously mentioned A Christmas Carol and It's a Wonderful Life, stories about characters who gain a magical insight into their lives and relationships by seeing timelines and outcomes. There are lots of examples of movie representations match cuts and callbacks, shots that deliberately mirror something from the previous scene for narrative purposes, or which make reference to other works. I've come across examples of repetition and looping, especially in Japanese cinema that predate Groundhog Day, but they tend to be shown in far more dreamlike and experimental ways. Prior to 1993, there just don't seem to be significant examples of this, at least not at this scale, where the language of the loop is consistent and present throughout the entire film. The one spanner in the works, and we're going to put a pin in this, the one spanner in the works that I've found is a movie that was also released in 1993, 1201, and we're going to talk about that next episode. Consider one example from television which aired, curiously, only 1 year prior to Groundhog Day in 1992. Cause and Effect, an episode from Season 5 of Star Trek The Next Generation. This is an iconic episode of television, and it's also one of the strangest they ever made. This is highly improbable. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. In fact, I'm hoping maybe next year to do a big series all about it. And one of the quintessential properties of TNG is its consistent visual approach. It's a well-known fact that you can basically cut any scene from any episode in any season together and they will match.
Sir, we're flying with the planet again. Sir?
And yes, here's this episode that's literally about repetition, that is shot in a way that completely departs from the norm. In the episode, the Enterprise gets caught in a time loop that always ends in its destruction and the death of all crew members. And then they reset and find themselves wherever they were the previous afternoon. Characters slowly become aware of the loop through a sense of deja vu and being able to predict
anymore.
7. 9. 2. The episode is shot using these increasingly weird angles framing, and not to mention the score, is kind of played for horror, with the camera work often isolating the characters by widening the frame, making us, the audience, feel like peeping toms. They jump to the other side of rooms, and we see like glimpses of the set that we've never seen. We see more of the ceiling than we usually ever see. There's some really intense extreme close-ups, as well as a lot of like gliding, developing shots that you're just not used to seeing in a show that was shot so strictly for economy. I mean, look at this. This is the weirdest shot in the whole episode. We start on an extreme close-up of Geordie. We are too close to Geordie, and then by the end of this huge long shot, we're like beneath them, and they're like stepping over us. This is the exact opposite of the approach to Groundhog Day, which enhances our connection to the audience surrogate film. If Dr. Crusher is the lead character in this particular episode, our connection with her starts off strong, but is weakened by the cinematography. We get more and more distant from her. I think assumptions were made that audiences might get bored or confused or, change the channel. That nobody wants to watch the same things happen again and again, shot in exactly the same way. And you can compare this to episodes of science fiction procedurals in the same kind of style that aired after Groundhog Day, like the X-Files episode Monday, or one of the best episodes of Stargate SG-1, Window of Opportunity. These two episodes adhere to the Groundhog Day rules. They use, wherever possible, the exact same framing, the exact same camera movement. They even recycle a lot of footage to enhance and amplify the sense of repetition. Before Groundhog Day, there were definitely other time loop stories, and we're going to talk about them, but there existed no consensus on how to show them visually. And after Groundhog Day, the overwhelming majority of time loop examples adopt its language. It contributes permanently to the language of cinema, creating a visual trope that is widely accepted as the norm, or at least a starting point for how to tell these kinds of stories. So much so that nowadays it just feels like common sense.
Infinite time loop situations I heard about.
Defender of the people.
Yeah, I might have heard of that.
In the last section of this video, I want to talk about why we, the audience, are drawn to time loop stories. What makes them so appealing that we literally watch them over and over, and keep making them even though dozens already exist. In the thoughts of the writers and filmmakers, as well as many critics over the years, Groundhog Day's core appeal lies in the idea of getting a second chance.
I think there's always have this natural inclination of wish I could have done better. Whether it's something like, could I do high school again? Can I go back and be the popular kid this time, or smart kid this time? But also just I had an argument with my wife today, or my friend, and I wish I had said this. So I think there's if I could go back and do it one more time of life, that I think is what makes the idea of time travel, not even time travel, but just time travel stories appealing.
In addition to this, I have a theory based on my own experience of the film, as well as other time loop media. It's a little bit wibbly-wobbly, so apologies if I don't quite express myself correctly. I think there is something in these stories that, for many people, taps into the imagination and a deep desire to explore. If you're like me, sometimes when you're walking around a new town, you might imagine stepping into every single house, visiting every shop, getting to see what's behind each door. But you know it's impossible. But in Groundhog Day and other time loop movies, you get to vicariously experience that sensation. What if I did this? What's behind that door? What's that guy's story?
At some of its most basic storytelling is the idea that A then B, and a time loop film immediately gives you the chance to say A then B, A then C, A then D, A then E, and on and on and on. As a storyteller, I think there's immediate novelty and fun to be had in saying, we're going to start with the exact same premise, the exact same day, exact same people, everything's the same except for one choice is going to be different. How is this choice going to send us into a different storytelling path? And sometimes it can be wildly divergent, sometimes it can be different. But I think there's a novelty and a hook immediately appealing to storytellers, and it turns out awesome for audiences to do that.
And then there's just the immense storytelling potential of the time loop, which takes us back to the very start of this video. And it's because these storytellers learn at some stage. What is this about? You might say, well, it's about this guy who gets stuck in a time loop and live the same day over and over again. No, that's what happens. But what is it about? The best time loop examples, in my opinion, are the ones where the MacGuffin of the time loop exists in service of a greater metaphor. Basically, the ones that have heart. No matter what happens. Selection. All mine. Wow, that's interesting. The groundhog formula has proved to be incredibly potent for conveying all sorts of themes and can be used really effectively to explore different perspectives. Romance, of course, but also coming of age, midlife delays, family dynamics, exploration of grief and guilt and war. This is kind of just true of all films, but the examples where a deep, nuanced emotional theme is at the core of the story are the ones that, for me, have the most appeal. And in the world of Groundhog Day clones, it's usually the difference between those that get it and those that miss the mark. If you're still watching this video at this point, you presumably love Groundhog Day, and probably other time loop stories as well. So I kind of want to throw a question out to the audience. I want to hear from you at this stage in the series. What do you love about time loops? What is it about them that makes them so enjoyable for you? And do you have any strong opinions about anything I've said in this video? Let me know in the comments. I do actually read all of them. Thank you for enjoying this episode of Goodnight Rita. In the next episode, we're going to be talking all about 1201, a twin film that came out the exact same year as Groundhog Day and features some eerie similarities.
Conjuration. Shield. Just a magic missile, why not? And then maybe have jump in the groove. I'm familiar. I mean, why not?
You hear more info come out about the Florida shooter, you guys aren't going to believe the political ideology of the shooter. It's going to shock you what the political beliefs of this young man who sent the That's right, it's another liberal. By the time the suspect, Phoenix Beckner, was 6 years old, court records showed he had to repeat kindergarten class. What even happened to him? His parents fought bitterly for every aspect of his care while accusing each other of manipulation and abuse. Judges were forced to intervene again and again. And those of his family court matters became Jesus. Any particular reason, by the way, why New York Times opens by talking about extremist political views but doesn't share those views? I'm sure they will as we scroll further down, but, you know, it's implied. You know, I don't think it would have been implied if he was, like, an ISIS guy, you know? Like, if he was a radicalized, like a Wahhabist, like, crazy Muslim, something, right? I feel like it wouldn't be implied if he was that, you know? They would have just put it in the headline. So are they going to explain it? Fortune! I mean, the answer is yes. Here we go. You only have to get through like 20 paragraphs, right? Before attending Florida State, the suspect attended Tallahassee Community College, now known as Tallahassee State College, where two former classmates said he shared far-right political views they found troubling. The suspect was a registered Republican who regularly voted in elections. Reed Sable, 22 State, said the suspect joined a political discourse club that Mr. Sable ran in Tallahassee State. The suspect's time in the club was short-lived. He repeatedly espoused white supremacist alt-right views to the point where people were uncomfortable and we had to ask him to leave, Mr. Sable said, adding that the discussion often became against just about everyone else, with the suspect escalating arguments and seeming to thrive in the opposition. Nice. He said Rosa Parks was in the wrong. He strongly implied black people were ruining his neighborhood. That's great, man. Bash debate, Lord. It's nice to see, like, how these people look when a little bit of light is shined on them, like the average Twitter user, you know? These seem like rage bait type arguments. Yeah, but clearly he believed them, like, strongly enough to then do a shooting, right? Like, it's not, like, and this is what I've always said about people who are lay ethically trolling. It's like, if a person, man, like, you're not 13 anymore, anytime. When people are, like, constantly schizo-posting about their insane faith controversy about it online, like, the insincerity of their opinions underneath the insincerity, they have, like, a coherent, sincere set of positions. It just implies that they're insane. Everyone, like, that people love to, like, aestheticize the idea of, like, a chaos agent who believes a bunch of stupid shit, but, like, it's all like a greater mask for an underlying good set of positions or whatever, and that's just not real. The guy has never existed. It's not 15 years ago. People aren't posting, you know, I love Halo Master Chief, you know? I love my favorite girl character to play as Metroid. It's not that hero, okay? They're just insane people. I bet you anything, there were already calls made about this guy, that he was a danger, and the reason they didn't go through, the reason that nothing was done about it was because of the son of a police chief. That's my bet. I hope not only that he's dragged through the mud after the fact, I hope they bring charges against the mom. I just want to see. Remember that couple? They were sentenced after their kid did a shooting. They were sentenced to prison because it turns out they were woefully negligent in preventing the attack because their kid was crazy and they gave him a gun and they like stopped they like did everything they could to like lead up to the shooting, basically. You know? I just wonder if this is another case of that. I don't know. Maybe we can investigate it. Yeah, they tried to stepmother deputy, not police. That's right. Hey, deputy. It's not good. Isn't he also like a member of the USA?
Father and Robert Morales. His brother writing, quote, he loved his job at FSU and his beautiful wife and daughter.
He didn't shoot himself? No, actually, the police responded pretty quickly this time. They got him.
Grad student Madison Askins was hit by a bullet that's still lodged in her back.
I heard the shooter come up next to me and I heard him reload. So I knew I needed to stay dead. So I stayed slumped over. I remember him saying, yeah, keep running.
Oh, come on now. You're just having a bit of fun. Aye, so much fun that those thieves almost got past. We got them now, eh? But once the world starts singing,
right? I don't know, catch me at a mass shooting event. I'm tripping and falling and pretending I got hit in the head died.
That'll be some real fun.
Some shooters actually check for pulses. Okay. But if they're gonna do that, they were just gonna shoot you when you moved anyway, right? Check for pulses. That's not like they were gonna stop. Okay, maybe in like some situations, but I think overwhelmingly they're running around.
Florida State University community coming together as they remember the victims of Thursday's tragic campus shooting. Everybody's just shocked and sad and angry. You can just kind of feel it in the crowd, like everybody just got super quiet. The shooting rampage left 6 people injured and 2 men dead. Robert Morales, a former assistant
Police search for motive in deadly campus attack. We need to acknowledge as a society that the motive was that he was a Republican. And that's it. Like, he just held right-wing beliefs. He held beliefs that were the logical extension of the administration. If you believe the administration and follow what they believe through to its logical conclusion, you will be a fascist. That's not like, you don't have to go further than the administration. You're just following what you're being told. If you watch Fox News and listen to them, you will be a fascist. And that is enough. The ideology of that administration is dead. They just want people dead. There's no sense to it. It doesn't have to benefit anyone. They just like death. They enjoy it. They love it. It's a death vote. We have to acknowledge that as a sufficient justification. And I want to see that argument trotted out in court, you know? I want to see that argument trotted out in court. Like, can you imagine if during the Nuremberg trials, when we were trying all of the Nazis, we weren't allowed to describe Nazism as an ideological component of their actions? We would like vaguely gesture it like, well, they were white supremacists, obviously, you know, Aryan supremacists, they were, you know, they were chauvinists, they were militaristic or something. But the actual, like, Nazism, the ideology itself wasn't allowed to be touched on, like it was too partisan or something. It's crazy. And eventually you have to call a spade a spade. What's making these people like this? Well, I genuinely forgot this happened because right-wingers are silent on this, but they're still trying to start a race war because of that black kid who murdered the white kid. Wasn't it even, I don't even know the details of that case. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, every time a black guy kills a white guy, they want a race war. And every time one of their own goes crazy, they say it's a threat. That's the reward you get, by the way, for going like epic 4chan-based mode and doing a shooting or whatever. You like the defending the white race or whatever. Everyone in your camp calls you a Fed and says that you're fake and Jewish. That's your reward for, you know, sacrificing your life forever for the purpose of killing your classmates. So what a great life these people, you know, build for themselves. Phenomenal system, really. Why isn't Fox News watching Grandma shooter? Do you know what Fox News watching Grandma votes for? Ideologically, the only difference between the median Republican who goes out there and votes and the shooter is that some people are crazy enough to take it. Most of them want Trump. Whether or not they're fully aware of what they're doing or the political implications, we're never going to be in a country until we recognize that if you're voting for Trump or any of his cohorts, you're voting for death. And if you go and commit a school shooting, you're also committing death. You're dealing with levels of abstraction, but eventually you have to hold people accountable, at least morally, for what they're voting for. Like, how could you not? Obviously, I don't think anyone, like, essentially no one's arguing anything other than, like, yeah, school shooting, it's immoral, it's illegal, so on and so forth, right? You know, whatever justifies that's unacceptable. And of course, if there was, like, a crazy commie who did a school shooting, it wouldn't matter if his political views ostensibly align with my own. I'd say, well, that's crazy. You shouldn't do that, man. That's bad. Crazy position of mine. Hot take. I think school shootings are bad. I know I'm in the minority in America on that one, but, you know, I still believe it. I hold to that virtue. Woke? Yeah, I'm virtue signaling. You're like, how are we, what are you supposed to do when, like, the ideology that you're up against is like, okay, for 99.99% of them or whatever, their way of expressing that, like, ideation of death is to vote for people who will plunge us into the abyss, right? Like, their goal is to institutionalize it. They want it done. In the typical, like, Amerifat, you know, disposition, they're too lazy to do it themselves. They want their elected officials to do it for them. And then every once in a while you get a crazy shooter or something. But we saw what happened on January 6th. How easily one turns into another. Oh, I'm just here to support the crazy fascist Nazi candidate. How quickly that turns into them wanting to go into the Capitol building and lynch, you know, politicians. And we saw what happened in the early days of COVID or the George Floyd protests, right? Where you had 3%ers and Proud Boys, you know, marauding about taking advantage of the destabilized social fabric. All these militias woke up, and a lot of them thought this is our chance. There were leaked messages. Some of them got arrested for crimes they committed. There were leaked messages from the militias. A lot of them thought this was their happening. This is them rising up. All these crazy It's not all of them are going to go and do a school shooting, but a lot of them are waiting for society to destabilize to the point where they can go out there and, you know, they don't want to do a school shooting, but they do want to clean up the neighborhood. It's always the day of the vote. And you have to trace this back to the central doctrine, the ideology, right? It's not just the abstract extremist views. It's that student was a Republican. Nah, he didn't. You get me. Dangerous way of thinking? How is it explain how? With your dickless vague posting. What do you mean? Dangerous to identify the root cause of the fascist ideology is the fascist political party that believes in fascism and says fascism? The danger is not acknowledging that, yeah, you made it political. Like, the danger here is not acknowledging the underlying factor here. Look, crazies exist across the political spectrum. We're dealing with a broader institutionalized crazy. So what are we supposed to do? It's just crazy. Do you have any idea how many people have died already just from the retraction of USA? You can go read articles on it. Hundreds, possibly thousands of children have already starved to death in sub-Saharan Africa. Why? No reason. No reason. I mean, because it was woke to beat it. That's interesting. Right? It's just death. It's just death. The markets crash. Everyone's lives get worse. Everything gets more expensive. A few people get wealthier, proportionally, but just a few, right? Life gets worse for everyone. We alienate our allies. We declare wars. We isolate ourselves. Everything gets worse for everyone for no reason. Can we not identify what's causing this? God almighty, I'm just saying that it's over for us if we don't. That's why I don't like the description or the relegation of this to it's extremist views. It's not extremist, man. You have to it's not extremist. It's not extremist in the sense that it's not uncommon. The underlying views are the cause, and they're quite mainstream. And I've said this before, but if you believe the shit they're saying on Fox News, if you believe the shit that Trump is saying, it is morally derived from that the kind of shit that shooter did. The shit they say is insane, man. Listen to a Trump speech. Our country is being invaded. It's under attack. The blood of our country is being poisoned by migrants and illegal aliens. Holy shit. If you listen to that and you think, in your mind, you're thinking, oh, the civilization of the West, the United States of America, a system, an institution upon which hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people rely upon across the world, that is about to be destroyed by these invaders. And some of these people that believe that, they turn out to be killers, they go out and murder people. That's a straight one-to-one derived position from the propaganda they were being fed. You can't be doing that, man. You have to acknowledge where this is coming from. It's really, really dangerous. And I want to be clear, by the way, right? I want to be straightforward, and I want to say, and we talked about political violence as an abstract, thing before. You can look back. It's always easier to talk about it in retrospect, right? What about the Civil War? What about the Revolutionary War? What about the French Revolution? What about Rosa Parks? What about the Civil Rights Movement? Blah, 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 blah. Can you justify political violence in the past? Okay, well, what would you have done as a Jew in Nazi Germany in 1933 to defend yourself, right? Everyone gets back to the abstracts. I'm not even talking about the abstract hypotheticals. I'm not even talking about, the broader, well, at what point is anything justified? I'm just saying, flatly, as a matter of recognition. And you know what the difference is? The difference is honesty. Because when Luigi allegedly did what he did, a bunch of people were like, damn, well, Brian Mangione probably killed way more people than Luigi allegedly has. And I should be clear again, allegedly. Did I just say Brian Mangione? Sorry, why am I blanking? Yeah. Why am I blanking? Don't keep saying Brian Mangione, then I'm going to lock it in my head. Brian Thompson, thank you. You can't keep saying that. You're going to lock it up here. You know how it works. I just think it's there's a clear difference in intent and character and honesty when there are so many people on social media, right, who are just flatly saying, okay, leaving aside the alleged thing, people are saying, Luigi was justified, or they'll just say, well, maybe Brian Thompson shouldn't have killed so many people by denying them insurance. Maybe, Brian Thompson shouldn't have been, the guy who churned the death engine, right? That's integrity. At least you acknowledge the underlying motivations there. So all I want is for people to say, hey, maybe there's a kind of, I don't know, direct parallel between the political party and the ideology that's, talking about how the blood and soul of the country is being poisoned by degenerates and mother going out there and committing mass murder, Maybe, we could draw a link there. But no. Instead, we get the New York Times saying he had extremist views and then, tenuously linking, maybe that caused it, maybe it didn't. You get, police are still searching for a motive. We found the motive. Whatever. But also, like I've said before, about 20% of school shootings are politically motivated. I disagree. I would say that almost all of them are, because a huge number of them are guys who fall into the some version of, some iteration of the incel pipeline, right? there's a reason why school shootings have risen massively alongside the internet, right? Like, guns existed back then. There was literally no difference right now between, like, right now and the 1980s when it came to, like, the material capabilities of committing mass murder in that fashion. Like, this rose with the internet. And I think, you know, I think it's, even the Columbine kids at Swastika draw to the private journals. Yeah, I mean, all the way back to the beginning, man. All the way back to the beginning. That's ideologically motivated, not politically. You're drawing a distinction that doesn't exist, my friend. It's summed up as politics. There's a direct, like, there is no version of that, like, internet, like, you know, hyper-chauvinist, isolationist, you know, women are ruining society by denying sex, that shit, you know, and politics. That's politics, right? It's all politics. It's more sociology. Well, sociology is politics. Politics isn't like a separate category of things. Politics just describes, like, the organization of human belief, action, resources. It's a very broad. It's like, in politics is the point where everything converges for us to discuss, argue, fight over who does what. You know, politics is all encompassing. There's a bunch of, like, you know, subcategories, areas of study. What is everyone's aversion to labeling something as political? I don't know. I just think people just get the impression that politics is like when a political office is involved, or like when a politician is involved, or whatever, you know? But saying that politics is when, you know, something involves politicians or law would be like saying that, I don't know, the concept of physics only applies when you're in a laboratory. Like, sure, maybe that's where the action's happening, but that shit's going on everywhere. The physics, that applies when you're taking a poop. Otherwise, the poop wouldn't fall down when it leaves your butt because of gravity and stuff. Not that people talk about this. I agree. Yeah.
The scrolls will eventually come back to him, because once they're in the book, and the book is full, I will take it back. And the Guardian can take control of all those. Zell can have that, because she will throw it. And that. And that. And then the rest. I probably don't need food anymore. I have lots and lots of food, and I can always get more, so I will stop stealing all food except for alcohol, which also goes to Lazel. A booze hound. Yeah, don't give her that one. That's poisonous oil. Send that to camp. I think she should also be juiced. She's not currently. She's puny, and she doesn't have a elixir. Oh, fuck! Oh well, I will set them all up after. But for now, let's freak this. And then she's strong. Mega strong. Okay, I'm clear enough to actually get some stuff done.
So, let's say you're watching an episode of The Simpsons. What's the first thing you think? Most likely, it's the
losing a 5-figure
sometimes they get rid of it completely.
What to choose?
So that makes me wonder,
Not up for trading
how
today, I'm afraid. Well, that's interesting.
Which
What
scenes
to
have they
choose?
used most often? And most importantly, how many versions of the Simpsons opening are there?
We're exposed.
Hello, Petal. Need anything? Any lotions or potions?
In all my time talking about the Simpsons on YouTube, I've almost never given attention to the opening credits. In those retrospectives, I always go straight after the story and callously pass over the first minute of each episode. But the Simpsons intro is pretty weird when you think about it. Can you recall other animated series that'll cut up its intro this dramatically? You don't see Family Guy cutting verses out of its opening song. Bob's Burgers will do its thing every time. When I was little, I happily sat through the subtitle scene before every episode. But the Simpsons? Nah. The producers are like, who cares? Let's swing an axe at this thing. We got more story to tell. There are 3 major versions of the Simpsons opening theme. Season 1, Standard Dub, and HD. Both the classic and HD Simpsons intro is 1 minute 8 seconds long, not including the couch gag. This goes from the clouds to the moment Homer goes through the living room door. The couch gag is typically about 4 seconds, followed by 6 seconds of the TV, although these lengths can vary wildly. We're going to focus mostly on the credits themselves today, and do couch gag bonanza some other time. The opening consists of 9 sequences. 1, the clouds. 2, the establishing shot of Springfield. 3, Mark's chalkboard. 4, Homer at the plant. 5, Marge at the grocery store. 6, Lisa's dance class. 7, Homer at North of the street. 8, Marge and Maggie driving. And 9, the driveway. And here are the time links for every scene. Obviously, there was
This sounds like it's gonna be boring as fuck. I'm gonna fuck. No, you made a mistake here. You ran out of thinking and made something dumb. I'll watch it when I'm laying in bed and trying to go to sleep.
She runs a bunch of online stores, like buying cheap items and then reselling them on Amazon. That kind of stuff. And then one day, in 2012, it starts an Amazon storefront that resells high-end makeup brands like Lancome and NARS and Tarte, or however the fuck you say it. And she stores the inventory at her house, and she packs it up, and she ships it out, and she does the whole thing. But at some point, Matt gets an idea. She makes makeup from the store and then resells it online. So allegedly, that's what she does. She comes up to the store, steals the makeup, and then puts it in her Amazon store to sell. And as you could guess, her online makeup business becomes her most successful business venture in her life.
Imagine that.
It's 100% profit. However, I guess this little bit of money isn't satisfying for Mac. And she's like, nah, not good enough. She wants to make
that's interesting.
So at some point, she comes up with a plan to get even more stolen makeup at a quicker rate. She's gonna have teams of people go out and steal. And that's exactly what she does. She somehow gets these shady young women, all in their 20s, to each go out to different makeup stores, and they steal a bunch of shit, they give it to Mac, Mac pays them for their services, and she sells it on Amazon. And let me tell you, it is absurd how well this scheme works.
Find the key soon enough.
Pulling in a lot of money. In fact, she's making so much money that in 2018, she and her family moved from Arizona all the way to California. And there, she buys a $1.3 million house. So her Amazon store must be doing pretty well. But even still, Mac is like, nah, not good enough. And she wants to make more. So in California, she decides to level up her game. And at this point, her husband is involved in all this. His name is Kenneth. So Mac and Kenneth, they decide to expand this operation. And I don't know how they find them, but they somehow find a bunch more shady young women, all in their 20s, all with long-ass
criminal records to be a part of this scheme. And Max starts calling them the California Girls. So that's what we'll call them. And so Mac makes sure the California girls are skilled enough for the job. And she'll message them on Facebook or WhatsApp or another app where they can text. And she'll send them all the instructions to steal from these stores. And she'll also send them like long shopping lists of merchandise to get. So then the California girls will separately go to Ulta or Sephora or wherever Mac tells them to go. But of course, they're not a normal customer. They're low-key stuffing their purses with makeup and brushes and all kinds of stuff. And the whole time, Mac is like texting them, asking them for updates, making sure they get every single item from her list. And she actually ends up being kind of a hard ass of a boss. But it must be a pretty tight operation because these girls don't get caught. So Mac keeps sending them out again again and again. And business
at a certain
is
point,
looking pretty good. In fact, it's looking so good that Mac asked the girls to start recruiting their criminal friends to help them like it's a freaking MLM. And they do. So eventually there are like a dozen California girls all stealing for Mac's operation. But even still, Mac is like, and she wants more. And so she instructs the girls to steal more than makeup. And she starts sending them to lens crafters and other stores to steal like sunglasses. And she makes them start stealing purses. And she resells all of that on Amazon too. And that does really well. However, it's still not as well as Mac would like because she's still like, and she decides to expand outside of the state of California and go national. So she starts sending the California girls to retail stores in different states across the country. That way they're not hitting up the same stores over and over again. And she'll send them money for flights to the East Coast, and she'll pay for their rental car, she'll pay for their hotel, and each of the girls will fly to a new city, head to a store, and steal some makeup and ornament. And then they'll give it to Mac, and she'll sell it on Amazon for a profit. And this is actually a picture of a bunch of the stolen makeup that Mac has to keep at his house. I guess she keeps all of these things right there. And if you're like, Ray, why would young women risk getting caught and over this? Because they're actually making a shitload of money. To Mac's credit, she actually pays her employees pretty well. At least one girl is making around $57,000 a month. A freaking month! While Mac is, of course, killing it too. Like in 1 year alone, she and Kenneth make $1.8 million. $1.8 million from stealing makeup. In fact, Mac and Kenneth are making so much money that they decide that their current house so they move. Not too far away, but in 2021, they moved to a much bigger house, because they're like balling now. And I actually like looking at criminals' houses, so let me be a real estate agent really quick and show you this big-ass house they got. This is a 4,500 square feet luxury home. It's got a pool and a hot tub, it's got a winery, it's got a really nice staircase, it's got a breakfast nook, you can hold weddings here, which Mac actually does at one point. It's got a whole ass orchard. There's even a little separate building where they have a chapel, so it's got a little church on this property, which is the perfect place to worship after you've committed a bunch of retail thefts. Interesting. So anyway, Mac's operation keeps going for more than 10 years, while Mac herself has managed to make almost $8 million flipping all of this stolen product on Amazon. And so the empire she's built, I mean, it looks like it's untouchable. What to take? Okay, so here's the thing about these makeup and surely no one will notice. Stores often know when things come up missing. They're not idiots. And while they may not catch the person during the act, they will sometimes still report the theft to the police. And they'll sometimes hand over any surveillance footage they have. So at some point, the California Highway Patrol and Homeland Security, they get word of some of these thefts, and they start investigating and looking at some of this surveillance footage. And of course, on some of this footage, they can see the California girls doing their thing. And eventually, they're successfully able to identify two of them. And then, one day in 2023, the two California girls hit up an Ulta to steal a bunch of stuff, and they're walking out
door with their purses all full of makeup that they didn't pay for, and that is when police swoop in and bam, they arrest them. Then police get a warrant to search one of the girl's phones, and in that phone they find all those messages that Mac sent this California girl. You know, the ones with the very detailed instructions on how to steal and the list
I
of
don't know what
items to
type of
steal.
armor that is,
And
so I'll just give them
so,
armor,
bam,
and then
they
I won't.
arrest Mac. And I don't have a mugshot, but here's a picture of her getting arrested in real life. Also, bam, they arrest her husband, Kenneth. Here's a picture of him getting arrested in real life. And both Mac and Kenneth, they take a plea deal, and he gets sentenced to 5 years in prison, while she also gets sentenced to 5 years in prison. And they're both ordered to sell their big-ass new house to pay restitution to Sephora and Ulta. And the California girls, I don't know what happened to them. I couldn't find anything on them, but I assume they flipped and got off light.
How much doth a soul weigh?
Oh, I know how crazy she is.
I can agree with you more. I've been going since about 1986. It made the Bible in so many ways come alive, but I fell in love with people, with the culture, with the nation. I took my children and my grandchildren right before the October 7th, and we embedded ourselves in different hotel apartments. We embedded ourselves within the Orthodox community and had Shabbat together and ate together and fellowship together, studied the Torah together, went all over Israel. And it was one of the most memorable, best times that we have had as a family. And so we are so grateful. I encourage Christians all over the world, you must make your journey to Israel. Listen to Paul. I say it will be the
that you hear about. They're not somewhere remote. They're real places. They're actually very close to each other. Really? So you can actually see where the Bible happened. You can actually see where it happened. And there are remnants too. I mean, there's a church right there on the Sea of Galilee.
Right now paying the bills, I guess. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, if we're like, sacrificing America as an altar just to continue our indefinite military excursion to the Middle East, if we're giving it all up for it makes sense. It's deeply anti-Christian and anti-Jewish to suggest this, you know, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not like Netanyahu believes in Judaism or Paula White believes in Christianity, right? Like, they're both just empty, soulless demons, so it doesn't matter, right? You know?
Not for now. It's there, it's standing there, and you can stand with it.
You know the prophets, so ho ho.
Well, the reason birthright is because it comes to, like, you know, in-debt Jews to the state of Israel, right? Like, the whole point is, like, what if we took Western money investment in the in Israel, and we used it as a, like, fulcrum, you know, as an incentive. We try to get, you know, Jews a free birthright so that they can become Zionists. And the problem with Jews, right, is all Zionist propaganda. Learning about Judaism, okay? Know about, like, how the state of Israel protects us. It's the only place for us to know where the whole point.
Just the richness of the Bible and its archaeological things that have been discovered and the findings that are still happening really give people such an education that, I'll be honest, they will not get over here in America at 30 minutes in a church or an hour in a church service. You start looking at the universities over here. It's almost like as a Christian, you should be mandated to go to Israel to make it to heaven. That's crazy.
Right, remarkable. Sasha, when I worked right, they literally explained to me that they come on here and said, you know, that it will be majority Jewish. It's a fascist political project. You know, it's just meant to make Jews nationalists, or in this case, Christian, I suppose. Is she supposed to be a Protestant? She's an evangelical.
continue that understanding.
Good job,
Because, as
boys.
you said, Prime Minister, there's a
Well,
little bit
let's
of
see if
victim
they reset.
ideology.
I don't even know if they reset the stops or not.
That for many in a very terrorist mindset or ideology that erase that
I
way.
think I might just go rogue for all of the rest of my levels. Like, I have all the stuff that I really need from Warlock. I'm not really going to get much more. But I could get 10 levels of Rogue, which would be fucking bomb, and I could do a lot with. I might go Arcane Trickster,
It's
though.
kind of crazy that the faith advisor to the White House, an evangelical, is arguing that Christians should need to profess fealty to Israel before they're allowed to. Protestants don't have a pope, so we don't really have like a spiritual leader to turn to when it comes to doctrine. You know, using a 5-finger discount. Most Americans are Protestants. Interesting selection. All mine. Not up for trading today, I'm afraid.
We know two things.
What to choose?
America was founded on
That's interesting.
Christian values, and
From your pocket to mine.
Founded on Father Abraham, and we are out of that. And so we clearly understand that us here in America, but we've got to make sure that we're educated.
It really is crazy how far that big term has gone. Like, that's entirely a Dennis PragerU term. Like, constructed by Jewish fascists and Zionists to construct a false mandate of shared anti-Muslim Abrahamic faith. You know, it's not a real thing. Up until, like, the Vatican II, the Catholic belief was that Jews were responsible for the death of Christ.
Need anything? Any lotions or potions?
Like Judeo-Christian, you're putting a dash between them. What does that even
mean?
What's the difference between evangelical and Protestant? Evangelicals are like a particularly devout and crazy branch of Protestants. They're all evil, basically. They're all evil people.
Die if I meant. Looking for steel? I have, well, something close.
Just a way of, one, propping up American support for Israel, and two, galvanizing people of the Abrahamic faith. The idea, essentially, is that Abrahamic faith is not on its own. That's interesting. Like, it is the Judeo-Christian wing of that faith. It's largely like a component of the Zionist project, right? I'm afraid. It's not, there's no, like, in the context in which it is used is overwhelmingly to manufacture a false consensus between the West and Israel as though they have some kind of, like, shared bulwark against the hordes of the East. I think to a large extent it's also been a way of pacifying Nazis, right? Because people who talk about Judeo-Christian values are overwhelmingly fascists. And a lot of fascists are not. Nazis, you might have heard this, are anti-Semitic. And I think that Nazism has always been kind of inconvenient for a lot of MAGA, for a lot of, like, the
Something's on my mind.
because they're a little too crazy. Like, they're selectively useful, but also not want you being anti-Israel. The administration doesn't want you, being so out there that you're galvanized against the Zionist project. So I think it's kind of a way of manufacturing consent in that direction.
The generations after us who continue to preach this, teach this, talk this, have it over dinner, research, get the information.
Over dinner?
But people are like words. People sometimes think that everything that trends that you saw before will continue definitely into the future. For example,
it's also purely an American Christian thing too. Yeah, speaking as an American, I can only say that I have only heard the term used by Americans. I have not heard any Christians from outside of America ever use that term, so I can't really say.
People question whether the younger generation of Israel, which resorts sometimes to TikTok and other things, will they fight for our country and for our survival and our future when the test comes? They fought and fight like lions. Like lions. The Bible says they shall rise like lions. And they did, and they do.
Can't risk being in
the people here say the next generation of Christians are being weaned away or waning in their.
I just want a little look. I can take what I please.
Maybe also
want to choose. All mine.
In their ignorance.
Interesting selection.
Sorry, just reading.
From your pocket to mine.
Letter dated 1821.
Nice.
All mine.
From your pocket to mine. I can take what I please. Little bit of
Kind of?
The concept of Judeo-Christian ethics or values in an ethical sense was used by George Orwell in 1939, along with the Judeo-Christian scheme of morals, interpretation of humanity. According to historian Kate, the term became a descriptor of the U.S. in the 1930s when the country sought to forge a unified political identity and attempt to distinguish itself from fascism.
Sure what reason there would be to lie.
Yeah, it's kind of like sharing the East, I guess, with regard to communism. Obviously, fascism wasn't the East. Carefully now. Civil religion by the 1940s, the term
One can pay, but
opposition to communist atheism. In the 1970s, the term became particularly associated with the American Christian right. It is sometimes employed in a separate context in political attempts to restrict immigration and LGBT rights. I think to a large extent, it's also meant to kind of like throw a bit of a boomerang with regards to Christian conservatism, where the person says like, you know, we're fighting for Christian rights or something, or for Christian ethics. It's like, oh, you religious boomer, you know. You Christian fundamentalist, you theocrat, you divide. But if you say Judeo-Christian, you're referring more to this like broader civilization, which doesn't really make sense. What is Judeo-Christian civilization? What are you pointing to? That's interesting. Like that's, you know, I don't really. Kind of like a weird union of terms there. I think if you like, what tendencies are you referring to?
How is your more
I just think that if the person said, you know, we need to fight for Christian values, it would be easier to criticize them than if they said we need to fight for Judeo-Christian values. Because now it seems like you're not engaging in this partisan advocacy for religious doctrine, but rather for like a broader set of principles, you know? Because you can't be like a Christian bigot if you're just advocating for a broader set of principles. It's not even selected to Christianity, it's Judeo-Christian. And we can't be Nazis if we're advocating for Judeo-Christian, right? You get what I mean? This is such 2016 discourse. Well, it kind of stuck around, didn't it? I mean, you're right, but it stuck around. They still use the term Judeo-Christian all the time. And look at this shit. An evangelical fascist and a, you know, Israeli fascist, and, you know, I mean, they're both Zionists, of course, sitting down and talking about how, like, Christians won't go to heaven unless they do birthright. What the fuck? And the White House does use it officially. It's in, like, White House documents. And they've issued an executive order.
Who says that's got to continue? I think there's a change happening right now. I think it just happened.
Yeah, I think
that changes. The people spiritual content for their lives, and they're coming back towards it. And when they do, and when they look for the sources, the wellsprings of our civilization, our societies, they'll come back to the roots, and the roots came from that land, the Jewish land, you know, that piece of land of the edge of Asia, the edge of the Mediterranean is where it's all started, you know.
It's a nationalist project. These people are religious. They don't actually believe in God. Or if they do believe in God, they don't believe in their belief is like they're fake people, right? They're just using religion as a pretext. Somebody I've been reading is that the state of Israel wants more American Christians moved to Israel to basically be camp fodder. The reason being that most Jews that would already move there have, and that's closer to the Zionist project. I mean, it's not just like a camp fodder thing, it's that they want Israel to be like a permanent hotbed of instability because it's so much justify more military action. You know, obviously, you know, Zionists don't actually care whether or not if Jews are Christians or control Israel functionally if they're already totally Christian. It's just they don't it's not really like a demographic. In a lot of areas of the world, Judaism is treated as an ethnicity. Yeah, that's true. Obviously, we say no to the state. We don't literally mean there is one single ethnicity, right? There are some categories of Han Chinese, but China remains functionally a Han ethno state, right? We're not really like, you know, we're not picking lettuce out of pig here. We're talking about general tendencies. Look at any Israeli media internally. Like, they are very, very, very clear on their desire to keep a certain group of people in power.
Time to learn our ABC is I want our kids to learn about AIM. Hi, pre-K teacher here. No need to worry, Nancy. It's in our schools will cover workloads eventually. This week we're working on STFU. The most accurate description of the Trump presidency so far. So far 2025 feels like being awake during surgery. Friendly reminder, in the United States, criminals are entitled to due process. Even if you pay large money to break an election, still top secret documents oversight of law and other government. No matter how egregious your crimes, you're entitled to due process. They're onto something here. Marijuana has been shown to alleviate nausea, vomiting, insomnia, headaches, anxiety, and depression, all of which are symptoms of Donald Trump being president. I mean, it was 420 a couple of days ago. Saying. Marco Rubio is now acknowledging that it might not be possible for Trump to end Russia's war in Ukraine. Trump promised to end it before he took office. But I thought Trump would end it when he bought promises made, promises not delivered. Imagine actually end the war in 24 hours of being elected, or even the first 24 hours of White House. The line was so absolutely astounding. How people in the US handling the ruling as sarcasm. You don't get it. They didn't believe that any more than they believed that he's going to lower the prices of groceries. Those were just Trojan horses to unite in bigotry. Let's get in and out. And we've kicked off so much more. Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space. They leave distance annihilated, cause things to grow, and improve productivity. Excuse me? Drug tests for everyone in the White House, and I'm not joking. If there's ever a breach in the space-time continuum, at least we'll know where it began. What the fuck is this nonsense? The number one sign you've been brainwashed into supporting fascism is when you manage to never attack fascism. Republicans have the numbers to impeach Trump in the House and convict him in the Senate. Let's see what you're hiding. Well, that's interesting. Everything he does. I can take what I please. What to take? Using a 5-finger discount. All mine. Well, that's interesting. Surely no one will notice. Interesting selection.
The white working class Judeans? That had to be a joke. No one's that dumb. The white working class Judeans. I mean, they...
I told my wife that's probably the only experience he has to go off of, and one of the
Hello, Petal. Need anything? Any lotions or potions?
And was just not submissive.
Nay, bud.
That's all it was.
Die by that heroic and reeking of this place. Never gonna smell.
Breathe quiet. Okay. What do we have here? From your pocket to mine. Not up for trading today, I'm afraid.
This is a world waste of abuse. Ridiculous waste of money. So, how much does each Trump golf outing cost taxpayers? I actually had a MAGA friend argue with me that he's taking the trips for security. Because people are trying to kill him. Flying to play golf in the middle of a field where everyone can see you. Really pro-security. And it's not easier to protect him at the fortress known as the White House, where agents are routinely trained to understand the layout and operations. Having him stroll out an open field is safer? Yeah, reasoning is not their thing. All in all, $3.4 to $4 million after all the travel, detailed security, their travel, and hotel stay.
Maybe he's doing those sounds. That's possible. Or they could just be stacking in channels that I've basically ignored. Now let's watch this again. I will be getting back into Elden Ring at some point.
This might sound like a very abstract question, but in the context of Elden Ring, asking it will lead us on a path toward the most elusive, eldritch entities in the game. And ultimately, some of the deepest truths about Elden Ring.
Nice.
So I ask, are we passively taking in the world around us, or are we engaged in a dialogue with reality simply by opening our eyes? The core concepts in this video inspired this entire series and will completely reframe how you see the story of Elden Ring. So,
Save before I do. Okay, first I'll organize the actual inventories before I organize the box.
That was a bit dramatized, but I am quite serious about this video being a payoff for many of the concepts we've discussed so far in this series.
I get here, so I got cool music.
You can tell me whether or not I have presented something worthy of being called a grand unified theory.
Aw, you guys stop.
In case it's not clear from the title,
Whatever.
this means extensive spoilers for Elden Ring. But I will try to minimize spoilers for any other media I bring up in the course of the discussion. If you're new to this series, then welcome. I will absolutely encourage you to go back and watch the prior 3 episodes of the Grand Unified Theory at some point. But for now, let me summarize the core concepts you need to know. First, we discussed the nature of runes, and posited that they are part of a visual, world-making language, spoken fluently by the 2 fingers. These fingers are literally agents of the greater will, and rather narratively, represent the actual creative team behind the game, which crafted the world of Elden Ring through the complex motions of their fingers. Next, we discussed the importance of visual symbology, which has an additional layer of meaning in a world where shape and motion are the language of creation. These shapes correspond, among other things, to the concepts of causality and regression, the process by which things divide and recombine as they experience the pull between worlds. Finally, we discussed how this process of division and recombination is expressed in the recurring theme of duality throughout the game. Things that appear to be opposites are in fact intrinsically linked to each other, and the ultimate expression of this is Erica herself, a being both male and female, from Venus, whose ascension to godhood is directly connected to her role as a being of opposites. So, with all of that in mind, let's begin by tackling the most mysterious entities of Elden Ring lore, the Outer Gods. At the outset of our journey, the lands between, we are introduced to 2 divine entities, Erica, frequently referred to as the god of this world, and the greater will, the unknowable distant being that is credited for both blessings and punishments on the land. Together, they form the foundation of the Orthodox religion of the lands between. However, when we enter the land between, this divine order is already breaking down, and through the cracks in the foundation, we can see something else starting to seep into the world, the influence of other divine forces, commonly referred to as the Outer Gods. Little can be said with certainty about these mysterious entities. They don't exist as invisible beings in the world of Elden Ring, but as invisible forces influencing the lands between through their chosen representatives. We have the Formless Mother, whose domain is flowing blood, worshipped by both. We have the Fell God, source of the flame of ruin, guarded by the fire giants. There are unnamed Outer Gods of rot and of death. And there are even more enigmatic entities, such as the Frenzied Fiend, which is never explicitly called an Outer God, but rules over the domain of madness. by their very nature unknowable. Aside from promoting their
I mean, that might have been it.
death, madness, or rot, we cannot know their intentions, or even if they have further intentions. For this reason, they are commonly perceived through the lens of cosmic horror, as eldritch beings whose minds and natures are so alien that we cannot truly fathom them, much like the Greek ones of Bloodborne. They are not malicious, but uncaring, a trait that lends itself to the quiet dread of cosmic horror. Through this lens, we can
I
eventually
keep getting
come to see
pings
the
in my
itself
Discord.
as
What
an
is
eldritch
going
being
on?
that seeks simply to impose order, with no care as to the shape of that order, or the impact that order will have on the people of the world. This is clearly a perspective we are intended to take on the outer gods. But there is a wrinkle that grows more and more noticeable as we explore the shadow realm of Elden Ring's DLC, where we find ancient forges that remind us that the flame of the fell god is associated not only with destruction, but with the art of smithing. We can encounter friendly members of the forager brood, connected to the god of rot, and they give us recipes for fermenting items with protective qualities, a kind of beneficial rot. We increasingly find hints that ancient cultures had different, even positive relationships with some of these beings. So why are the modern incarnations so reliably destructive? To answer that, let's consider the title, Outer Gods. The name is translated literally from Japanese, Soto no Kami, but there is cultural significance to the character Soto and its counterpoint, Uchi, which can help to inform our understanding of that. Uchi literally means home, and you can see that the kanji is sort of like a person inside of a structure. Anyway, the dichotomy of Uchi and Soto is vitally important to Japanese culture.
And although everything's a camp.
The entryways to Japanese homes, which always set aside space at the threshold of the home for a ritualistic entry, where you remove your shoes and typically announce yourself, even when space is at a premium in Japan. Maintaining the cleanliness of the inside space is an important part of distinguishing it from the outside, as is observing ritual when entering a name. This creates a sort of sacred space in the home. And the Uchi-Soto distinction extends beyond the literal to social interactions and hierarchies.
No, he doesn't.
Here the divide is between in-groups and out-groups. Beginning students of Japanese are frequently surprised to learn that there are multiple ways to say the same thing, depending on the level of formality that is appropriate. And this formality is determined by the Uchi-Soto distinction. People use not only different words, but a totally different grammar when speaking to your boss or teacher than you would use with your friends. And it gets a lot more complicated than that, but the point is that in Japanese, Soto Naru Kami can be read to imply that these are outer gods in the sense that they are outside of the current order of the world. We discussed the role of the circle in my episode on sacred geometry, and here once again, the importance of a ring as a shape that divides between those who are inside the bounds of the golden order and those outside of it reoccurs within the context of gods themselves. This also reinforces the significance of the ring shape to Mikkela's concept of unalloyed gold, which I also discussed there. So, how do outer gods exert influence on the world if they are outside of the current order? Well, indirectly, it turns out. For in order to enter the world, they must enter in person. And to do that, they must first be seen. Eyes are among the most frequently recurring symbols throughout Elden Ring, as is blindness. There's a clear pattern of important characters having one eye shut, including Ranni, As was noted by a commenter on another recent video of mine, the first item we received in the game, memory of grace, has the appearance of sunlight reflecting on the water, reinforcing that it is the light itself that calls you across the sea to the land between. After you arrive, multiple characters will ask you if you still see the light of grace, an apparent sign of divine favor. In fact, you can see this connection between America's favor and the light of grace within a person's eye as you play the game, as noted by Zuni the Witch.
Indolence breeds
This light of
madness.
grace appears visibly within the eyes of characters who are accepted within the bounds of the Golden Order, and it can even be found in the eye sockets of skulls scattered about the lands between, but not in the eyes of Tarnished, which explains how many NPCs are able to identify you as such simply by looking at you. We can also look to the Golden Rune items for this connection between grace and vision, as more advanced versions of the item gradually come to look more and more like an eye. Now consider that the Rune Tree is the brightest source of light in the land between. As I've noted before, it is a glimpse of
Let's
the light
move.
of the sun, and possibly even contains the sun's light. The light of the sun is the source of all light and light, and is the light that guides you back from death, healthy life. What this all shows is that a significant part of America's movements in maintaining orthodoxy is controlling light. That is, controlling what you see. See this reinforced in the DLC for the abilities of American grace, lines, and the very best. The Eye of Grace and the Eye of Occultation explicitly describe America's
Here's ripe with magic.
by controlling its vision, and we see this play out directly in Yesterday's story, where America replaced her own son's eye with one that sees the light of grace as a way to seal away darkness within them. So with all that in mind, how do we read the theme of blindness in Elden Ring? It's tempting to consider it a symbol of blind faith, especially since the starting faith-based class comes with a blindfold. But after everything we've just said, it starts to seem like the exact opposite. If America's grace enters through the eye, then closing your eyes is a way to challenge orthodoxy and see the world in some other way. Now consider again that blindfold you start the game with. This faith-based starting class is called the Prophet, and their equipment makes it clear that they were being punished for prophesying.
Boom, 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 boom,
This is the
boom, boom.
company of exiled prophets who foresaw
Defender of the people.
by the end of the game, we learn that this prophecy is true. Indeed, there is a true Hindu, Eastern, and Western culture of blindness coinciding with the gift of some other kind of sight. In ancient Greece, we have Tiresias, the blind prophet of dreams.
Oh, I could go for a good meal.
Stories like Oedipus Rex and Antigone. In Japan, there is the traditional role of Mitako, a role exclusive to blind women who are said to be able to commune with spirits. As Miyako observes in a detailed
Time to dally.
translation piece for the game, Mitako is a possible reading of the characters used to describe America's the people we've been calling simply shamans. These shamans are exclusively women and attuned to spirits.
Watch your back.
Eyes are never shown. The other character connecting to spirit tuning is Roderica. And while she isn't blind, her cloak explicitly says that she never once saw the guidance of grace. So, when one cannot see the light of grace, they gain the ability to see something else. With this in mind, the plethora of characters who are partially
How many
or
die
fully
today?
blind
How many
makes
die
much
tomorrow?
more sense. For each of them is able to see an alternate way that the world could be, or a different kind of divinity that is hidden from the world by the light of the Rune Tree. Bonnie can see her dark moon. Both Mesmer and Melina were said to bear visions of fire, and Vogue has an eye that has been pierced by an overgrown horn. The last thing it ever saw was blood. This also helps us to understand why we can encounter certain creatures and items only at night. When the orthodox light of the world dims, we start to see things that were suppressed by it. Death birds and military creatures turn mutants, and when we look up, we can see the night sky, a myriad of lights that are not the sun, a veritable sea of possibilities. Indeed, the ancient astrologers were able to invent sorcery by doing this very thing. By looking up at night and seeing the stars, one astrologer was able to see a glimpse of the primeval current.
All's well that ends. Not as bad as it could have.
The glimpse of the primeval current that the astrologer saw became real. This is supposedly the first sorcery. It doesn't say that the astrologer learned something. We can understand something far deeper about the nature of creation itself. We hear multiple stories about the primordial history of the land between. And as I've noted before, there is a thematic resonance in the most core aspects of these stories. Hayata relates to us the words of the three fingers, saying that all things came from the one great, which was divided into many things by the greater will. Count Emir tells us that we began as stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies. And there are numerous descriptions of the crucible that describe all of life once being blended together. Let's take these storytellers at their word for now, and imagine the creation story that they are jointly telling us.
Risk being in open view. Free for the taking.
A kind of divine cosmic unity.
I can be subtle sometimes.
On my own levels. I think they're going to be rogues. It's like, what would I get? Stuff that I would just have to concentrate on? Like some guidance that I already have and like access to more spells? A familiar, maybe that would be a good idea. But I don't really have a build planned for that. But if I go rogue or bard, there's no bard yet. Bard might be a good idea. Because that could give me vicious mockery. And that, if I don't have it, I need to see if I have it. I don't think I have it though. I have Mage Hand. No, I don't have it, so good. I could go Bard. Because I already have my expertise. Just having access to some of the Bard powers could be good.
This is how the Dark Moon is depicted in Ronnie's ending. How the Lord of Frenzied Flame is represented. The eye is something into which light falls, and this gives rise to a vision. While we're discussing vision and cosmic reality, I can't avoid bringing up the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. In the early 20th century, physicists realized that the most accurate way to describe the behavior of the smallest things, such as electrons and photons of light, was by using math that involved indeterminacy. That is, by pretending the particle didn't exist in a single place until it was actually measured and located. The equations were useful, but many scientists, including Einstein and Schrödinger himself, thought of this as a mathematical trick and not a real description of the world. The famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment, where dead and alive at the same time, was originally meant to be absurd, to be evidence against treating this math as a true description of reality. And yet, generations have come and gone, and the Copenhagen interpretation persists.
our best model
I need to just see something here.
reality suggests that in some sense, things only become fixed in place, only become fully real when they are observed. There is admittedly some poetic license in this way of talking about our own world. But for the purpose of discussing the fantasy world, poetic license should be assumed. So in Elden Ring, light emanates from the cosmic forces of creation and falls upon the land of Eden. But it is only when the golden light of the greater will's emanating intent is seen that it becomes fixed and fully real. This is why golden runes are located within the eye. The words of creation are a visual language, transmitted through light and made manifest when they are seen.
Does this count as adventuring?
Enter a person, become known to them. More than one vision for how the world is
Okay, what the fuck?
There's the golden light of the greater will's emanated intent, and then there's the light of every other star, every other aspect of the one great that was fractured. These stars
Yeah, like I already have athletic. Okay, so sleight of hand and athletic. So now I'm gonna save. I have 10 and 9. So if I take levels in rogue, can I get more? Can I be double expert? What does that even mean?
For when you stare into the abyss also stares into you.
Because the remembrance levels? Because the remembrance?
Starlight, I also feel obligated to comment
Oh, Father, you've given me a gift.
that being Sorceress Selin's description of glintstone sorcery. She says this.
Our art draws upon the powers embedded in glintstone.
I can't double expertise, but I can double proficiency?
While glintstone contains residual life, and thus the vitality of the stars, it should not be forgotten that glintstone sorcery is the study of the stars and the life therein.
I cannot overstate how confusing this dialogue was the first time I heard it. What's the difference between ancient life and residual life? The Japanese text can help us here, as the distinction is more obviously between the remnants of ancient life and the remnants of star life. In the context of a great rupture in the sky, triggered by the greater will, this starts to make more sense, as the greater will sent a specific golden star bearing life towards the lands between, and the other pieces of the one great became fractured and scattered across the sky to become the stars. We've discussed that light, whether from the sun or stars, is but notably, starlight that falls and doesn't land in an eye seems to be able to crystallize in Elden Ring, as we can find starlight shards throughout the game. It seems that given enough time, this process of starlight crystallization eventually leads to glintstone, the catalyst for sorcery. The phrase, the wisdom beyond stone, also starts to make sense if I can take what I please, is made of starlight, to take what I choose. Not up for training today, I'm afraid. Also of note here,
surely no one will notice.
Nice. Literally as pyroxene. Pyroxene is an extremely common mineral on Earth, but it can also be found in meteorites. In 1996, a particular meteorite made primarily of pyroxene was analyzed by scientists and noticed microscopic patterns.
We're exposed now.
Hello, Petal. Need anything? Any lotions or potions?
The existence of alien life. And while further analysis largely
Nay.
Okay, but did it? It didn't. So I need to re-roll my clock. That's okay.
This divide between golden light and starlight, between day and night, inner order
we meet, I shall be here in my camp for whenever. Beyond mortal, they, for a mere pittance of most willingly. Suspicion always, should thou or any of thy compatriots perish, fate, dost thou require a new, as thou desire?
So weird. Okay. This class is so strange. Okay, so those two, yes. That, yes. I'm not going to take the skies. I'm going to take...
or to places where the light of the sun doesn't reach. These outer gods must be seen by and take purchase within a person in order to influence this
I
fractured
don't
world.
really know
But why
how
exactly
best there.
does the greater will want to fracture the world in
Yes.
the first place? Why divide the
Yes.
world into its many dualities? In order to discuss the nature of unity and division, and to get at the core of Elden Ring's artistic message, I'm going to bring up the old anime and an even older religion. Let's cover the religion first, and you can look forward to me bringing up the anime in a minute. The religion in question is Gnosticism, an early branch of Christianity that included ideas that were eventually deemed heretical by the evolving orthodoxy of the Church. These ideas included the fact that creation was fundamentally flawed, as the creation of material reality by an entity called the demiurge separated us from the spiritual world and from God. Gnostics claimed that we exist in a kind of dualistic purgatory and reconnect with the lost spiritual man. These ideas are connected to other Christian ideas that didn't make the cut into the
Like, is level 2 Warlock even required? I don't even know. I get my passive and a new spell.
It's not hard to find a parallel between Gnosticism
Could just be that.
and specifically with the claim of the three fingers that the greater will made a mistake, and that the active separation of mortal life from the divine is the source of all human suffering. The three fingers and frenzied flame seek to reunite the physical and spiritual worlds in brutal fashion. In this context, consider Hayeda's quest line, that we need to offer her literal human eyes in order to help her find her way to the truth of the frenzied flame. It is individual perception leading to individual identity.
Yeah, I don't know what armor I'm even going to ever wear, so that's probably going to be a good idea. Yeah, don't get rid of any spells. I definitely don't need 3 though, right? Like, that should be robe, ball, not that. What don't I have? Perception. I could just become an expert for perception. I'm gonna go Bard first. Add proficiency in persuasion. Because then I can get my level in rogue and get expertise in persuasion.
I feel like Akira and Evangelion gave a 1-2 punch to the Japanese psyche that compelled future generations to tell convoluted stories.
Perception. Oh, wait, what? Why not?
In any
say that the underlying thesis of Evangelion is this.
Oh, this is a skill proficiency. Then the expertise is in perception and persuasion. This dude has some crazy proficiencies. His double expertise. And I probably will level the other ones up. I probably won't add any more classes. I'll level the other classes up to fill up. I'm not really sure how I will level them up. In what order? To what end?
You don't want to show a single out-of-context scene from Evangelion in order to solidify the relationship between perspective, division, and creation. All you need to know is that the main character is experiencing a moment of unprecedented freedom from the constraints of the world. Voices tell the character in this space he can do or be anything, and yet he expresses anxiety and disorientation. In order to orient him, the voice offers to give him restriction by drawing a horizon line. This literally grounds our character. It gives him ground to stand on, and it makes our character one step more comfortable, but requires him to sacrifice a single degree of his freedom. This is the most pure expression of creation through division that I can imagine. For by drawing a horizon line, the distinct concepts of up and down come into being. This same logic applies to personal identity as well, for it is the space between us as individuals that makes identity meaningful. Also, the sound effect when Shinji walks is legendary. Metaphorically, it's even more fitting the act of creation is to draw a line, which in the context of animation refers back to the creators, whose entire meaning and objective in the audience is predicated on drawing a line.
That's a friendly shadow. Hello, Petal. Need anything? Any lotions or potions? Nay, but
Consider it great. It's true that we cannot possibly understand
My eye and fortunate with this place. Never get the smell out of my clothes. Great burn. Out of sight, out of mind.
Without any other to contrast itself.
Carefully now.
It had no real identity and no means of understanding.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't have the expertise to the advantage right now. I lost Cat's Grace when I re-rolled.
By breaking itself into pieces that can refer to each other, they can experience the pull between meanings and gain individual perspectives. This interplay of perspectives, of competing visions, is what actually creates reality. This is why our gods can only influence the world through individuals, for they require the active perspective of a living to make themselves fully real within the lands between. In fact, the nature of our gods changes with the way they are perceived. Consider, for instance, the remembrance of Arena, which says, after the church was burned to the ground, Arena discovered twisted divine pillars, which she weaved into the baleful scarlet knot. Now, I'm aware of the translation shadow of their ancestor, a twisted deity.
Oh yeah, no, I need to equip. That's right, actually. I can equip that ring. I'm not gonna pass it around. That's pretty cheesy. That's way cheesy. Too cheesy for music. But this is not. That, and then, I mean, it is, but it's not too cheesy. Let's give that to the Guardian, because he can use heavy armor as well.
Nothing hurts anymore.
Consider that she is explicitly called a mother.
Okay. So now I am juiced for...
Blood begins to flow down from the center of this pelvis. The formless mother's domain is birth. This also tells us why she is called the mother of truth. For it is through birth the truth is born.
This calls for
Traditional birth is another aspect of nature that is suppressed by the golden order.
in and out.
We can find the room
Your bucket to mine.
separated from the Elden Ring and locked inside the knowledge.
Being arrested
And I get her to be a life cleric, which I think I'm going to do. Strictly cleric sucks. But life, having a life cleric just to like do a daily aid and set her up so that she is rocking the socket.
Reoccurs repeatedly throughout Shadow of the Erd Tree. The best example is one that seems strange and unimportant at first. Red Bear. This is a man who fought a massive, terrifying bear and became fascinated by it. This led him to develop his own divine incantation called Roar of Regalia, which says, only through desperate battle with feral wild, discover a god.
Interesting selection.
The description also says this spell is jokingly referred to as bear communion,
little bit of this,
implying that its kind of incantation is mocked, and yet it works. This tells us that in Elden Ring, divine truth is not a static thing to be teached about, but something to be found through direct experience, much like our experience with the world itself. Indeed, there is a clear connection between the theme of creation emerging from competing perspectives and the artistic process behind the game. I've already alluded to the fact that the two thinkers, the conversant and inscrutable reflective creation, is a meta-narrative metaphor for the creators behind the game. Creating the world of Elden Ring is really complex motion for thinkers. And there's an even deeper level to this meta-narrative interpretation that we have available to us now. Because Elden Ring doesn't have a canonical truth explicitly handed down to the players. Rather, the truth
Doesn't make any sense.
struggling desperate battle with their reliance.
Yeah, because cutting action would definitely make this a lot easier.
One unavoidable issue when analyzing a game like Elden Ring is that while I'm speaking to you in English, the game was created by a Japanese team. As much as I may try to bring up Shinto or Buddhist ideas in my context, there is a very notice our experience of the game to take from your pocket to mine, experience of a Japanese audience.
Using a 5-finger discount.
the reference, and their translation of Shadow of the Earth will give us alternate possible translations for several of the writings. But there is an assumption underlying this analysis that warrants further scrutiny. Ambrose says that working with
Bloody racket! Oh, come on now. Let's just have it a bit
lines of text without any context of when and how they would be used. This is true of European translation in general, but there is a caveat first.
Softer than a whisper. Don't mind if I do. All mine. Not up for trading today, I'm afraid. Using a five.
Was involved with writing the story for Elden Ring, and from various interviews,
what to choose from your pocket to mine. I can take what I please. Well, that's interesting. Interesting selection.
Prior to the actual events of the game.
Little bit of this, little bit of that.
After several exchanges, Martin had a complete document with text that he handed over to the Japanese team, which they used as the starting point and inspiration for building an entire virtual world and writing the plot and dialogue that we experience as players. Martin's role was finished at this point, and for the Shadow of the Earth Tree DLC,
well, perhaps after I finish my research here, I'll join her.
Refer to the original document for inspiration, but that Martin did not contribute any new text. What this means is that in a meaningful way, the creative process for Elden Ring is published. And reality is not necessarily because all of the spoken dialogue
Time to skulk about. Free for the taking. What to take? Surely no one will notice. All mine. Well, that's interesting. Ah, nice. From your pocket to mine. I can take what I please, using a 5-finger discount.
Entire Souls series. The experience he had as a child of reading fantasy novels, translating into Japanese, and feeling lost in the mystery of foreign words. In other words, this translation, unfortunate side effect of development limitations, it is an intention.
Just out of view. I just want a little look. Interesting selection.
Caught red-handed. Perhaps you should practice.
That no one person or language can hold all the pieces of the puzzle. That viewing the same thing through a different lens allows you to see something new, just as one can find a new divinity by looking into the shadow of something sacred. This may be different for the Italian or German translations of the game, but in the case of the English text, there is reason to consider it as integral to understanding the lore as the Japanese text is. Even in Japanese,
this'll do wonders for the shop.
Let's see what you're hiding.
Worked into the language.
Not up for trading today, I'm afraid. What to take? Surely no one will notice. Little bit of this, little bit of that. What to choose? Little bit of this, little bit of that. I can take what I please. What to choose? What to take? Surely no one will notice. Interesting selection. Well, that's interesting. Not up for trading today, I'm afraid. From your pocket to mine. Ah, nice. Using a 5-finger discount.
Let us consider one more time the meta-narrative allegory we began the series with. The two fingers speak a kind of visual language that we struggle to understand, but they are said to be conveying the intent of the greater will. At the end of Shadow of the Earth Tree, however, we get a massive revelation that the mother of all two fingers, Netir, hasn't actually received any messages from the greater will. In the context of the translation issue just mentioned, it becomes clear.
You've a particular way with words, Gale. Perhaps oration suits you more than battle.
They're not mutually exclusive. Weave is served best with a dash of eloquence.
Creature called Meteor. Meteor was the first being to reach the lands between, tasked with the role of creating a world. She receives messages varying indication of the greater will from items on the player's house. And she interprets these messages.
You strike me as cleverer than most, Istiki Gale. Multiple tutors, I should guess.
Many a wise man and woman indeed. Waterdeep is the home of myriad scholars.
Ah, the City of Splendors. Spent a whole fleet's wake there with my father. What a delight.
Glowing eyes are rarely a good sign. Best be careful.
Boss is whipped you for talking that way.
To find meaning within the game, and over the course of years, to recombine their understanding into a shared vision of what Elden Ring is. And we find within the game factions and outer gods that can validate and reinforce our many understandings of the game. If we believe that
This is more fun when he was screaming.
Intent of the creators to find a harmonious truth, we can follow the path of the noble gold mask. If we think that the game is really about player versus player combat, then we can join the ranks of the Bloody Fingers. And if we think that a search for meaning is futile, then we can melt it all away in the searing flames of chaos.
Minthara's gonna skin us! No one knows about this damn weapon!
The story is about the process of artistic creation and the process of understanding. For we live in a world where our practical needs and the weight of identity drive us to find shortcuts from truth. We become accustomed to perceiving ourselves and others in a particular light, and accepting the world we see as. But in order to learn something new about ourselves, we must gain new perspectives.
Maybe we can set him on fire!
By breaking bits and pieces of ourselves apart, and putting them back together into something new. Then observe it, to see what those pieces say to us about the inscrutable. And however strange
everyone else
those pieces are, when light passes through them and shows us something new, there is beauty in that.
Well, at least we got the druid to keep ourselves
So,
entertained.
even with extensive editing, this turned into a long episode. But I really do see this as the climax of the Grand theory. These 4 episodes contain the core concepts I wanted to convey when I began. And believe it or not, many of the ideas I have discussed occurred to me on a single day, at least in their bushy, inarticulate initial form. It was October 16th, actually, and I genuinely felt like I was staring into the primeval current. I went to a social dance that night, and remember mentioning that I was cooking up a brand unified theory of Elden Ring to my dance partner. Her response was, "Oh yeah, I don't care." I'm glad that there are so many of you that do. So this episode is the point I was hoping to reach when I began this channel. That doesn't mean that I'm done with Elden Ring. I've had a lot of new ideas since beginning this channel. But it does mean that I'm going to take my time to digest before labeling anything new as part of the grand unified theory. I do want that label to mean something specific. In the meantime, I will be fleshing out my Elden Ring lore theories and feature between use of other games and media beyond Alien. I have some ideas in mind, but if you have any particular requests or topics, leave them here in the comments. And needless to say, the experience of becoming a YouTube creator has surpassed my expectations. Scratch that. I do need to say that your participation and engagement as viewers has transformed this project and made it more meaningful. Even if I didn't have time to respond or shout you out in a video, I have read every comment I received to date, and they've all influenced this project as it evolved and the ideas solidified. So, thank you. And once again, make sure to let the algorithm know that this is some engaging content. Till next time.
I pushed the wrong button. But, you know, maybe it's fine. That will have all of the boxes in it. All the ones that are at least keep a barrel, keep a wooden chest, keep a rustic chest of that type. Pouches will go in a different thing because that's fuck. Keep a heavy chest of that variety. I think I already have a heavy chest of that variety. Gilded chest, gilded chest. Okay, well, I'll give that one. Yeah, just put all the bags in there as well. Okay. Barrel of barrels. And bomb. Bombs, barrels and bombs. Okay. That heavy chest can be full of weapons that are Garbo. Hello, person who clicked. I don't know who you are. Feel free to leave a comment. I'm currently doing a little bit of last minute organizing before I do something else. Okay, and box.
All right, time to sculpt.
Well, at least we got the druid to keep on.
Time for discretion.
Oh, this was more fun when he was screaming.
Could wake him up by chopping off a toe.
Lie about.
Let's get to the shadows. On the hunt.
Let's march. You can't see me.
Bit of caution never hurt.
Need to keep focused.
Watching and waiting. Nice and quiet now. What? Keeping my head down. Carefully now.
Advantage on saving throws versus spells? That's pretty crazy, actually.
Something over there.
Oh, what the fuck?
Very fast. I must heal.
Oh, holy shit. Well then, let's living with one life left and all my back to school. Note to self, turn those all off. Oh, yeah, another. Yeah, get all those. Because that's another good name for. That's another good one as well. Bewildering Adventure is back. Sadly, nothing in here actually qualifies for that, but let's see. That does. I don't want to carry it around with me. Take the heavy stuff out of here. That's. Oh, they don't weigh. I mean, they don't weigh anything because they're in here. So let's move that. Move that. $9 and $18. So yeah, put those in here. those in that. Give those to her in case she needs them. Keep those in my inventory in case I need them. That's excellent. Leave 8 on me. Put 23 in. Actually, I'll just give that to Lazelle and she can put them in.
Shouldn't have wished to live in more interesting times.
Okay.
Don't want to draw any attention.
Ideally, I would have them actually in the other box, but let's see what I can do to make that the case. But first, let's open this, take that, open this, place this, put that in the box of boxes. Open this. Put in my backpack, put in my key ring. Put that in there. Okay, but let's also just put that in there. Open it, put everything inside of it. I'll put it in here for now, this wooden crate, just so I can pick up everything I can. Okay, so open, take all of those. Okay. And bombs can also go in here as well. No. Because when I take all my stuff out of there, the bombs will be left. Okay. That was just lying. Somehow that got heavier than the sum of its parts by quite a bit, but I'm not going to question the physics of that. I'll deal with that all on its own. First I will do the box of boxes. that one lied too. But that's okay, because it's the last one. I actually should have like 3 different ones, although they are annoying to keep track of. But okay. That one's just too heavy. This has got like there we go. Figured it out. Okay, and then this is the one that everything dumps into. And that's the one that gets sorted into. So that's good. That's how I want it to be. But now I actually need to get my stuff out of this box because I have it all in here. I'm going to take those. Okay.
Questions ever asked?
God? God?
That's a friendly-looking shadow. All mine.
His breaths are shallow.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I thought I was gonna die down here. They were asking questions. I told them I must tell the...
No hesitation.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay.
Wanna dance?
One big pile of sacrifices. How many sacrifices is that?
Mm.
What a waste.
Looking ahead. Everything is clear.
What the hell?
Okay, I'm actually going to save and re-enable the multiple monster mod because this game is going to be way too easy with like 8 guys. And if I can't handle that, I can't handle anything, eh? Okay. Ugh.